Hey, I'm in a, well, I'll just tell this weekend I had a little plant party. Um, I had some mushroom gummies and I mixed it with cannabis and cacao infused with rose blossom. Uh, and it was it was a lovely experience. There was a lot of blissful energetics. Um, and some kind of like vacillating between a watcher state that felt, a little bit like being a god or being invincible, but it was also, I mean, it was like I would pull back from the experience to observe it, um, which I mean, I guess that's the awareness trap or the watcher state. I guess it's a kind of dissociation. Some people like that's kind of the goal, and they do that and stay there, and there's a kind of peace that comes with that because you're really just watching all this drama unfold, and you feel like you can't be touched. Um, and then sometimes I would try to be like more embodied, like fully in the body, and I guess there is a fear with that because when you're in the body and not identified with a story or a self, then you really don't know what's going to happen next. You have no idea. You have no illusion that you have any idea, and it feels like stepping off a cliff. And if it, how do I say, it can feel, for me, it felt like sort of going back and forth. Felt like stepping off a cliff over and over again, and then pulling back, and then stepping over the cliff, and then pulling back. Because it's like, there's no sort of self structure. There's nothing to pull into that feels like me. There's nothing to pull back into that feels like me. There's something to pull back into that feels like, well, does it feel like me? Because it's, yeah, like it's kind of laced, it's kind of flavored with fear and judgment. So there must be some kind of identification going on. But it doesn't feel like when you really identified with your own story, your own self. Yeah, maybe there's two kinds of dissociation. The kind of dissociation that is like this sort of neutral-ish, much more neutral watcher state versus the very identified state where you feel like you just have no sense that you're an actor in a play. You have no sense that you're when you're fully identified, when your mind identified fully. Um, when I was mind identified, I felt like my own story is something important that needs to be managed, and the world needs to be managed, and there's an epic of good versus evil that I need to participate in, otherwise I'm just a bystander, and all that kind of stuff. Whereas the watcher state is more like, I see lots of drama and things going on. Um, but there's a little bit like, but who is this watcher? Who's watching? And so that kept going in my head through the whole thing is like, who's writing the script, who's acting it, and who's watching it? You know, and if there's non-duality, then that's all the same. It's all the same, right? Because it was very distinct. The sort of, at least the two states of kind of like embodiment where you're off the cliff, you're have no idea what's going to happen next, you're in it, but without a story. You're in it just with the feelings and mostly feelings, mostly energetic sensations, quite pleasant ones. It's like sometimes I had to like, it went on for hours and hours. Sometimes I needed to take a break from the bliss. It's like I need to go like, eat some crunchy food or something just for another texture other than kind of in a way, like, yeah, I kind of overdosed on bliss, which I know sounds like not a bad problem to have, and it's not. I'm not saying it is. But what it did was it made me feel, for one thing, really satiated. So I'm not looking for bliss as much because it's like bliss is another thing that can happen. It's a really nice thing. But like the subtlety of plain black tea or the innocence of a flower, like it doesn't all have to be bliss all the time. And it would be quite distracting if it was, to be honest. There'd just sort of be no room for all these textures and subtleties if it was all the same sensation all the time. Pleasant as it is. It's like, imagine if candy was maximally nutritious. And so you have the option to eat candy all the time, right? Or whatever, name your favorite food. You'd still probably want to eat other foods, plenty of times as well. I mean, yeah, you probably still wouldn't eat your favorite food all the time, right? That would get boring after a while. So yeah, the it really made it kind of plain when I was on that knife's edge of, not too far into identification, not too far into dissociation, but just like so here, now, present, embodied, that time doesn't. Yeah, you don't feel like you're really on a timeline. It feels more like there's a now, and it's like this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and then it's this, and it's like no story, no judgment, no anticipation, no hope, no fear. Still little voices at the edge that might try to inject these subtle thoughts like, what about the world going to hell? What about relationships? can you be in a kind of unity state that's often, I mean, it's even after, it's like it's been more than 24 hours since then. And I can still kind of feel into that absolute presence. And it's, and, this, bliss. Of course, anything is measured against the, the mystical experience I had when I was 23, which was so far beyond bliss. And there was no human body to worry about. There was no, I was really completely blown out into infinity. It was fantastic. Fantastic, whatever. There wasn't even room for bliss because it was just so much bigger than anything that you can feel in a human body. Like, like I've said, like a little teacup under Niagara Falls. That's the human body. That's the human condition. Again, not the worst problem to have, but it can be hard to realize that when you're focused on your story and your problems and your pains and your slights. And it helps. I'm on the most luxurious kind of retreat right now, which is that my husband took the kids to Turkey, which is his home country, for 2 weeks, leaving me home to take care of the cats in the house and stuff. And the yard was supposed to do yard work. Haven't done it yet. I did clean the whole downstairs in the first couple of days, because it's nice to be able to just be in a clean house that stays clean for days and days without anybody coming through and ravaging it like kids tend to do. But yeah, I'm here. I'm by myself. I have no deeds to do, no promises to keep. And I'm kind of letting myself off the hook because it would be easy to sit here and get my checklist and do 1,000 things that could probably stand to be done, and get nothing more out of it than things done. And things done has value, but it's not the only thing that has value. Let me tell you a little story. So one time, in college, I always had a long list of things to do. I always fell behind. I always felt overwhelmed. It was always scheduled. It was just always like, I need to soak all this in, and I need to do all the things and take too many classes and go on the trips and go to the social things and go to this and that and this and that. And that was before social media. I was able to, social media now makes it very easy to just piss your time away. But yeah, the problem isn't new for me, at least. So anyway, but yeah, one time I had this thing scheduled from 6 to 7. I think it was playing volleyball in the oval or something. And I get there and either I'd misjudged the time or it was canceled or whatever. And so all of a sudden I had 1 hour and nothing to do. And it was like I could have gone sort of all the way back to my dorm and come up with something to do. But it was like the hour was already allocated and everything else was kind of also, scheduled and had its, had its thing. So it was just like, just instinctively I had an idea. Well, not, whatever, just why don't I just follow my nose. Just not have any goal whatsoever. And so that's what I did. It's just like I looked at leaves and I looked at grass and I looked at flowers, and I walked through the quad and I looked at the stained glass and I looked at the palm trees, and I went around the church and I looked at the fountain and I noticed a rose just perfectly burst into bloom, just like when it's the maximum that it's bloomed, but nothing is wilted or gotten bug eaten yet, so it's just like just perfection. And I looked at that and I smelled it, and I just did stuff like that for an hour. And it was one of the best hours of my entire college career, Even I was always looking back at that fondly, as if I can't do it all the time, And then, of course, after college, when I didn't like my career options and I decided to lay fallow for a year and just take a easy job, and that's it. And the rest of the time's free, just free. Do whatever I want, right? And so, you might imagine like, okay, well, I just sat around eating potato chips all day or whatever, but no, it's like I watched sunsets. I read good books. I talked to interesting people. I had insomnia. I had a vision. I had an awakening. It's like I had, and that led to kind of the next. I mean, essentially, the awakening I had when I was 22 was realizing that it was after the month of insomnia. I had a vision of a sort of a simple clay figure surrounded by a ghostly suit of armor, like a golden suit of armor. And when I had the vision sort of flash into my head, then the insomnia stopped. And it still took me a while to figure out what it meant, which was that I'd spent all my life trying to polish this suit of armor that was bullshit. It didn't exist. And I had no idea what the clay was, like actually me. Like who the hell was I actually? I had no idea. And so what do you do with that? I had no idea. Nobody prepares you for your identity one day just dropping away to nothing. And I felt like I was on a featureless plane with no map, no direction, no nothing. It's just like, where the hell do I go from here? Who do I ask? Who's gonna know? And so the only thing I could think to do was like, well, laying fallow has been awesome. I mean, really, just it was one of the best years of my life, just because I could do whatever I wanted. What a concept! It wasn't like I was rich. I was working, and I was staying in a friend's unfinished basement for free, and didn't have insurance, didn't have healthcare, had a bike, I had basically no expenses other than food and food basically. And I was eating at a vegetarian co-op for like nothing, so all the money just went straight in the bank. So I decided to continue for a while. I mean, it's like, I kept imagining like maybe this will lead to something, and it did, one thing led to another, and before I know it, I'm in Palestine working as a foreign press coordinator for a Palestinian presidential candidate, among other things. So, and then writing a book and so on. I met my husband because of trying to get my book published, because I moved to New York to do that. So, yeah, it worked. Um, but then, of course, life kind of closes in, and suddenly, like, for example, I wanted to have kids, and we just failed expensively and uh, heartbreakingly for 4 very long years. And I kind of got into a depression, and then had the kids. And by the time I had the kids, I was kind of just really compacted, really. Not only had I not ever worked through like my old shadows, but now I had new shadows, and now I was just again just like, um, we had 2 kids in pretty quick succession. So, and point being, I kind of got out of that space where I trust the universe, and I'm just kind of happy with whatever happens, because I had certain goals, and that they I kind of got back into that compacted mentality that I'd been in college, basically. I can't relax. I can't enjoy myself. I need to do this. I can't relax. I can't enjoy myself. I've got a house and kids to take care of, and I've got this, and all that's true. But it's actually possible to fulfill your responsibilities while feeling free. Um, and so that's kind of what I've been aiming toward. Not I don't want to go to the top of some mountain and stay there. It's like I want to find fruition, whatever that means, and bring it into this life. And it feels really close right now. I guess there is a fear barrier. I guess there is a deep unknown that comes with really going all the way into these energetics that come when you're on that knife's edge. But it feels more like just a subtle aversion or excuse, or maybe tomorrow, that kind of thing. But this being in my little solo home retreat, where there's no schedule, I'm not eating on anyone's schedule. I'm not getting up at a certain hour to do what the schedule says. I'm really, really, really free, and in my comfort zone. So yeah, it seems like a fruitful scenario. Seems like a ripe a good possibility for not having for being able to see through the excuses that much more easily, because I don't. I probably should do some yard work, but I don't have to. Nobody's making me. Nobody really cares, to be honest. The yard can lay fallow for, my beds can lay fallow for a year. Probably wouldn't be the worst thing. But it reminds me of the knife's edge between, or the knife's edge of relationships, where you're not like over enmeshed, but you're also not like withdrawn. It's like this sort of a knife's edge of being available, but having boundaries, and being loving without being smothering. It's a whole skill, and nobody really teaches it to us. We have to kind of figure it out on our own most of the time, because our culture's bad at that. But yeah, I really feel like the little plant party that I had on Sunday unlocked something. Like I feel different than I did before. I feel an okayness that and through the whole journey too, there was an incredible okayness of like, even if a demon came, it's just like, hey, demon, join the party. You know, even if a bad feeling came, it's like, or an uncomfortable feeling, like, it's not a problem. It's another flavor, another texture. It doesn't say anything about me. It doesn't say I'm doing anything wrong. Nothing says anything about me. There's no me. So it felt so free and so easy and so like sort of low stakes and low key. Um, I felt like I don't know, like I felt like in my sovereignty. I felt like I don't need to bow and scrape and hope and pray for anything. It's more just like I'm the mushrooms and the weed and the cacao and the rose, like we're all co-equals. We're having a party together. I mean, you could say I'm the hostess, but I mean, I don't know what really pulled the strings to bring it all together. And then seeing the stars, and they look very, very, very bright and colorful. I can have a tendency to get sort of intimidated by, I don't know, the grandeur of nature. But it was just more like, hey, I'm your granddaughter. How are you guys doing? I'm doing pretty good, you know? Um, and this is very different than what I felt like 3 years ago. Very, very, very different. And there's always a kind of a voice that basically there's not a feeling of arrogance about this. I'm not anything special. And anytime I start to think maybe I am special, then there's this voice that's like, sweetheart, nothing special. It's all special. But that includes me, so I'm both special and not special, just like everything else. It's it's a relief. All right, good times. See y'all.